Hi, I'm Helen Bauer, and this is the Heart of Hospice Podcast. The Heart of Hospice Podcast is your source for compassionate and informative discussions about hospice and end-of-life care. I'm a certified hospice and palliative care nurse with over 15 years of experience. Whether you're a caregiver, someone with a serious illness, or you simply need to know more about hospice care, this podcast is for you. Join me as we explore all the aspects of hospice, from the details of caregiving to the emotional and spiritual dimensions of end-of-life journeys. For more resources and to connect with me, visit theheartofhospice.com and find us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Keep listening for today's episode.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Today's guest is Erin Collins, a certified hospice and palliative care nurse, end-of-life doula, and co-founder of the Peaceful Presence Project. Erin Collins is a registered nurse, a certified hospice and palliative care nurse with 17 years of experience in hospice and oncology. She's also trained as an end-of-life doula, and her heart's work is in end-of-life care. Erin co-founded the Peaceful Present Project after she realized that many patients came to hospice afraid of death and largely unprepared for it. She's committed to educating the community at all levels about preparing for and talking about serious illness with compassion and tenderness. Erin empowers families to be present with their loved ones in the final stage of life, for however long that might be, and she believes that by talking about and planning for death with our loved ones, we can ease much of the suffering that arises at end of life. Part of the work of the Peaceful Present Project is promoting advanced care planning, and to help provide guidance for this, they've created a planning tool called End Notes. Erin and I discussed End Notes along with diagnosis-specific advanced directives. She's got some great advice for creating one of these. Having the conversations is one of the most important things for advanced care planning, and Erin shares why it's important to talk about what you want with your family and significant others. Towards the end of our conversation, Erin shares what she thinks is the main reason most people don't have an advanced care plan. She also encourages everyone starting at 18 years old to have an advanced care plan, and she explains why it's important for younger people to have one. Their website is thepeacefulpresenceproject.org, and you can go there for more information. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Erin and I really focused on advanced care plans today. There's a lot to learn. Erin, it's great to have you with me. Welcome to the Heart of Hospice Podcast.
Thanks, Helen. It's so good to be here with you.
It's going to be a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it. So we're going to start with a question that I did not send to you. A little bit of an icebreaker. I know, right? I like to throw that in. It's an easy one. Here's your question. What's your favorite healthy self-care habit these days?
Ooh, that's such a good one. I think my favorite right now is tending to the 100 seedlings that I have growing, because I'm cultivating a cut flower garden. And so just like in the morning, tending to them and seeing how they're doing, and in the evening, making sure they're all ready to be tucked in, and just like watching that growth and that life come from what was nothing is really, really remarkable.
I love that. But 100 seedlings, Erin, that's a lot.
It's a lot, I know. It's a pretty big garden. And we'll see. Some of them will make it and some of them I imagine won't. But yeah, but I want to have at least one bouquet this summer. So with 100 seedlings, hopefully that'll happen.
I hope so, because that's a lot and a lot of work, but that sounds awesome. I can't wait to see how that works out.
Thank you.
We are talking about the Peaceful Presence Project and advanced care planning, which is one of your passion projects with your work that you do. So introduce me and my audience to the work of the Peaceful Presence Project.
Great. The Peaceful Presence Project is a 501c3 nonprofit community-based organization here in Bend, Oregon. We were founded in 2019 by a group of women, and we have a mission to reimagine and to transform the way that communities talk about, plan for, and experience serious illness through the end of life. So we really saw a need in the community to better be prepared for the inevitable. I'm sure many of your guests have this same kind of theme throughout, but the idea that we're all going to die, and we all know that. And so that's how we came together. And we have three primary service areas: education, planning, and then bedside presence with end-of-life doulas.
Amazing. So you are one of the co-founders, and you are a hospice nurse, a certified hospice and palliative care nurse. You're also an end-of-life doula as well. So in addition to supporting all these programs, the Peaceful Presence Project supports advanced care planning in a really robust way, which is going to be our focus today for this interview. Because I was so impressed when you and I spoke earlier about the way you guys are helping people do their advanced care planning. You have a system, I guess, for lack of a better word, called EndNotes. EndNotes. Tell me about EndNotes and how it works.
Oh, thank you for that question. So when we came together in 2019, one of our first kind of initiatives or projects, so to speak, was to create a way for people to be more engaged in their advanced care planning. And the way to do that was really to think about it more holistically, that it wasn't just about completing an advance directive. We had heard so many people who had gone through that process, maybe with a lawyer in doing their estate planning, and it just felt like a legal document, or they couldn't even remember if they had done it. But there was so much more that is involved with planning ahead for end of life. And so we developed EndNotes. It's a guidebook. That's kind of our the term we coined for it was a guidebook. It's like a little booklet that provides guidance through what we call holistic advanced care planning. And that entails body, mind, spirit, heart, loved ones, that there's all this all-encompassing aspect to advanced care planning. And so with EndNotes, we drafted the book to be upfront peace for my mind. And that is all the things that kind of check off the list. Because one of our co-founders felt like that's what they needed to get done first. If I could just get all the paperwork done and all the things that I know need to be checked off, then I could think about it more heartfully. And so that peace of mind section goes through financial paperwork and tasks to be done, healthcare paperwork that needs to be done, household paperwork, legal paperwork. And you write down all the contacts, and then at the very end of each section, we say, this is where you can find it. So that somebody's beloved who might be looking for all this information knows where to find it. And that could be as simple as it's in the third drawer down on my desk. It could be it's in the linen closet, Or it's maybe, we have a PDF version. And so some people might put that electronically in an electronic storage.
Sure.
So it goes from peace for my mind into peace for my body, how you want to be cared for at the end of life, including pain management, including any ceremony, including your post-death wishes. From there, it goes into peace for my heart, what you might want to say, what you need to tell the people in your life, or stories that you might want left behind. And then finally is peace for my loved ones. And it's just an opportunity. It's a blank couple of pages where you can write a letter to the people who are left behind.
I love the holistic nature of that. What really stands out for me about the EndNotes guidebook is you get the busyness part of it out of the way first.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, I know for me, I like to see those things checked off and handled before I can reflect on it. Right? Because you can sit and think about your advanced care plan for the rest of your life. You can think about it for years. But if you don't have anything documented, that it's not really all that helpful to your healthcare team, your executor, things like that.
Exactly. And that's what we often tell people is, one aspect of advanced care planning is thinking about what you want. Another aspect is talking about it. And hopefully people have that conversation, but we know that's challenging for many people to have that conversation. So at a minimum, write it down. Write it down, have it in a place where people can find it so that they have some idea. Helen, that was one of the things that I learned in bedside nursing, was that I had a lot of people the family members who were really struggling with knowing if they had made the right choice for their loved one. We didn't know. We had never talked about this. We had never had a conversation. Did we choose hospice too soon? Did we give up? Is this what they would want? I don't know what they want for a funeral. I don't know. None of these conversations had been had. And I saw a lot of emotional suffering from family members. And that was one of the reasons that this all came together.
I love that. I mean, you've probably seen this and heard these conversations where patients will say something, when they're asked, have you thought about what you'd like for a funeral? And they say, it's some old guy who's been living in the country. There's a lot of rural area here. So when I was at the bedside, I saw a lot of folks out in the country. Oh, just throw me in the ditch somewhere.
Yeah.
That's not an advanced care plan, just in case anybody listening thinks it is. That really doesn't tell your loved ones much of anything. What I think it does communicate is a reluctance to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not meaningful and really doesn't give any direction. Or how about this? Just do whatever you want.
Yeah. What you think is best. It's not for me. It's about you.
Right.
Right. It's not for me. I'm not going to be here anymore. So you guys decide.
Right.
And that's really, it's a lot of stress on family members. I mean, one is just the healthcare decisions that they have to make. And then the second part is after death. Those decisions can be a great burden when somebody just needs to grieve your loss. Right.
Yeah.
And that gets in the way. If they have to make all these decisions and plan and make all the phone calls and do all the things, it gets in the way of the grief process. We had that experience with my father-in-law, actually, where it took, a year and a half for my husband to go through probate with him. And in that probate, which was just the estate piece, but leading up to that, just not knowing. And he and his sister had a lot of questions about, are we making the right choice? Did we give up too soon? Because they had never had that conversation. I think that's one of the biggest barriers that people have is they don't have the conversation because it's hard to imagine yourself. If you're healthy, it's hard to imagine yourself not well. It's really hard to put yourself in the place of what am I going to want? And I think people get stuck on that. They think, well, I can't make that I can't make that decision until I'm in that situation. And then an unexpected incident happens and they are in that situation and they never had the conversation because they couldn't.
Yeah.
So I think it's really hard for people. And so that's why we try to encourage people to just, and use EndNotes as a conversation guide too, to just say, I got this great book and there's a few things in it I want to talk to you about.
And what a simple way to start the conversation. What a simple way to have it. So a will is an important thing, right, as an estate document. And I think younger people who are healthy could see their way to doing a will. If you have kids, right, if you have property or a business or investments, you could see having a will. But having documents that talk about the end of your life and how you would want that to look is so much more difficult. It's not relatable, I think, for a lot of younger people or healthy people. What are your thoughts and what's your experience with diagnosis-specific directives? You know, a directive that's specific for someone who might have dementia at some point or someone who might have Parkinson's disease at some point. Have you worked with diagnosis-specific directives?
Yeah, just a little bit because they're pretty new on the scene, right? It's really emerged in the last, let's say, 3 to 4 years where people have gotten more specific. And I think where we first saw diagnosis-specific directives was with COVID. And people were really adding these addendums that said, if I get COVID, don't put me on a ventilator, don't this, da, da, da.
Right.
That's where I think there was a little momentum around diagnosis-specific. And what I'm finding is that for folks that we do advanced care planning with, I feel like that diagnosis specifically dementia, ALS, Parkinson's, it gives some sense of control for a situation that isn't likely to have a lot of control. But I think the other thing that's good about it is it gets the conversation started so that at least as somebody progresses in their disease process, they've had a conversation with their family so their family feels better knowing that they're doing what that person wanted. Whether or not that directive actually holds up or it actually plays out exactly as it was written, it's giving the family a sense of, it's okay. We're doing the best that we can, knowing what we know from that conversation or knowing what we know from this document, we're doing the very best that we can. And if it's something like when to stop feeding someone, we know that they said, if I don't recognize you and I'm choosing not to eat, don't force feed me.
Right.
Then that gives them a little more permission or a little more comfort in saying it's okay that we're not giving her food because she said she's not recognized, she's refusing food. Okay, this is what she would have wanted.
And what a relief.
What a relief.
You're really not making the decision. The decision's already been made. You're just enacting what was already instructions that were already written out. And
yes.
What an incredible relief for people because those are hot button issues. So the feeding thing is a big deal. Treating infections can be a big deal. Ventilator placement is a big deal. Those are things that are life-altering.
Yeah.
Yes, literally life-altering. And people struggle with that so much. I have seen the diagnosis-specific directives used for Alzheimer's and dementia. But it's really, it's not it's not one of those all-encompassing documents that you could adapt to every single diagnosis there is because you cannot possibly imagine every scenario.
Right.
And how heartbreaking to try.
Right. And I think that's kind of what I was saying about we can't absolutely know what's going to happen and how it's going to happen or when it's going to happen.
Right.
But filling out a document gives somebody the control. Oh gosh, if I end up with dementia, I know that I don't want this, this, and this, it's like it gives them some sense that they're doing something about it. They're doing something about a possible eventual diagnosis that they can't have any idea when or if it's going to happen now. However, writing something down about what you would want just makes that a little bit less frightening, maybe.
Yeah, a little more manageable.
A little more manageable. And like I said, it inspires maybe that conversation, which I think is ultimately where we want people to go, is to start having these conversations so that their family all has heard it, their family's all on the same page. Then they've written it down. And then however the eventual end comes, there's some idea of what that should look like, or what we would want it to look like in an ideal world. So whether it's dementia or not, at least we've had the conversation. It's sparked a little something, and it's sparked some planning. And if we're lucky enough, it's created this more celebratory nature, right? Celebrating the life that was lived rather than struggling through the death as it's happening.
Yeah. We know that those decisions that a caregiver has to make, that when they're flying completely blind without anything to guide them, it only makes their grief more intense, more complicated.
Yeah. And more prolonged.
Absolutely. So we harp a lot on conversations, right? They're organizations. The Conversation Project is an organization.
Exactly.
But the reason for that is, for all the folks who are listening who are end-of-life workers who facilitate these conversations, and for caregivers who are trying to figure out how to tiptoe around these topics, the documents by themselves, they serve a purpose, but it's not enough. You've got to have the conversations, because you can't plan for every single detail in an advanced care plan document, an advanced directive. So those conversations enable us to address all the little nuances and the caregiving situations, and how a person wants to be cared for, what they hold dear, what their values are. So the conversations and the discussions, the reasons we keep circling back to that is because they're pivotal in the whole thing.
Yeah. We actually talk, that's part of the holistic nature of like the EndNotes process, is like what you just said, including caregiving in the conversation. A couple years ago, there was a great article in the New York Times that talked about what is the reality of caregiving at home, the reality of hospice at home. And so we think that that's a really important piece of the conversation, is to say, yes, you want to die at home, and here's what that is going to require. Is that possible? Right? Do we have the funds to have in-home caregiving? Do we have the family to provide in-home caregiving? What is that actually going to look like? And how can we make it the best for everybody who's involved?
Yeah.
So I think it's a really important part of the conversation in all of this planning that sometimes doesn't happen.
And sometimes families have the numbers to do the caregiving, but these are not willing people.
Yes.
Not everybody's cut out to be a caregiver, has a heart for it, is devoted to doing that. And also you have to always factor in family dynamics. The dreaded FD, but the first social worker I ever worked with on a hospice team, she called them the dreaded FD, the family dynamics. Every family has a dynamic. It can be unhealthy or healthy depending on what you got going on. But just because you have the numbers doesn't mean every single person there is willing to actively participate, or that the patient wants all those people to be hands-on, interacting as a caregiver.
True, absolutely.
There are a lot of dynamics in the whole process of advanced care planning. Really is.
Yeah.
So what would you recognize as the biggest barrier to people completing their advanced care plan? If you could really nail it down to one thing.
I think it's Well, it's a twofold one thing.
It's never simple, never simple.
It's the hesitation to think about it, because that means you're thinking about your mortality. And it's the, well, I guess that is just one thing. I think it's the hesitation because it brings the reality so close.
Yeah.
And so, one, whether people can't imagine that, can't put themselves in that situation, or don't want to, right? They're denying that, well, I'm healthy, I don't need to do that. And I think that becomes a barrier because people just won't do it because I'm healthy and I've got all these other things to think about. So I can't possibly imagine something that is so far off. And then guess what? I just was introduced to someone who is a 33-year-old guy who has suddenly stage 4 parotid cancer. He doesn't have an advanced care plan. He's 33. He was going to the gym all the time.
Right. So why have that conversation?
Why would I think about that?
Right.
And that to me, I think, is the biggest barrier, is just the lack of willingness to consider that you could ever be unhealthy. And so how could I ever need that? So what we do for that is we just talk to everybody. We say, if you're 18, you should have an advance directive. What a great way to send your kid off to college or off to, out of the house. Is
exactly.
Like, hey, this is a pretty big deal. Now you are an adult now and you get to make these decisions on your own. And I would love for us to talk through this so that if something happens, I'm respecting your adult decisions.
Isn't that an amazing gift to start a conversation like that? If I had been 18 and one of my parents had said that to me, what an incredible model or precedent to set that we need. So here's a huge life change. You're getting ready to go off to college. You're legally an adult, so you need an advanced care plan. And oh, by the way, every time you have a major milestone, you get married, you get divorced, you have a baby, you buy a home, things like that, you have a major change in your health, then you want to revisit that plan. But if you've started it at 18, you've set out this foundation for the documentation, but also the conversations, normalizing it, making it super comfortable. Well, not super comfortable, but making it more comfortable than it would be if you just acted like it was never going to happen. Let's face it, death is the elephant in the room.
Right.
Yeah, nobody wants to take a bite out of that. It's depressing.
Yeah. And I think that we are seeing that younger people it's a little easier for them to say it. We were teaching a workshop the other day, and it was at a kind of a senior living facility. It's a mixed multi-generational housing facility. And so they have elders, but they also have young people and children. And there was a young woman who, I think she was in her early 20s. And we kind of went around the room. Does everybody have an advance directive? And she raised her hand high. She said, "Yep."
In her 20s?
In her 20s. She's 22. She said, "Yes, I do. Everybody I know knows that I will not be on a ventilator. I will not do this. I will not have this. And everybody I know knows it."
Wow.
So it was easier for her, right? And like you said, now, how does that set the foundation? And so I think people, we see in so many events with kind of what they call the death positive movement now, there's younger and younger people kind of getting on board and thinking about it. So I think now we just all have to catch up to the youngers.
It may be harder for people my age. I'm in my late 50s. It may be harder for people my age to have those conversations than it is for these younger people in their 20s. Maybe because I've had some death of, family and friends in my life. Or maybe it just seems a little bit too close, at my age. It seems a little more real. But that's pretty amazing that she had that in her 20s.
It was incredible. And she was there to support all the elders, and it was great. Yeah.
That's cool. That is very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so talking about barriers to advanced care planning, as a nurse and a doula, what do you think the barriers are when it comes to healthcare providers initiating those conversations with their patients, because we are also not great at that.
Right. Well, I mean, that comes, I believe, from the structure of healthcare and the structure of healthcare education. And when you become a nurse or you become a doctor, you're becoming someone who is there to save lives. You're not becoming someone who's there to help someone die. Unfortunately, I think
Right.
it's improving, and there are movements to improve that. And there's so many great trainings now available to have those conversations. But, there's the hero kind of mentality with so many healthcare providers that I'm going to be the one who saves this person. I will not be the one who gives up on this person. And that is a barrier right there, is feeling that having a conversation about somebody's end of life is giving up on them. Gosh, no, that's more proactive in my opinion. If you're willing and able to have a conversation with someone, you are saying, I care about you no matter what happens. And I'm going to be here no matter what happens through all, if you're a primary care provider, I'm here with you for the long run. And so let's talk now so that whenever that eventual end might come, I'm prepared. And in the meantime, I'm here to promote your health and help you live a healthy life. If you're in the hospital, it's, or you're a specialist and somebody's diagnosed, I think it's better to say up front, okay, so here's what we hope. And this is what I think is going to happen with treatment. And in the case that it doesn't, help me know how to provide care for you if things don't go as planned, because I want to be with you the whole way through this. Right. So I actually think it's better care and more compassionate care to have that conversation about what healthcare decisions and end of life might look like from the very beginning. It's committing to that person for a longer time. So it has to be a shift. So that's the barrier, is that right now, up until now, I should say, up until now, it has just not been a part of the education that clinicians receive. Oh, no. Unless you specialize, right? If you specialize in palliative care and hospice, you get pretty good at it.
But we don't get that in our formal training in nursing school.
No.
I didn't do any sort of hospice or end of life. I definitely never had any formal education on advanced care plan discussions, ever.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and another part of it, I think, some colleagues of mine in nursing are working towards having nurses be reimbursed for advanced care planning conversations. And I think that could switch things up and eliminate some barriers as well, because nurses, when properly trained, are really good at those conversations.
Yeah, don't tease me, Erin. I had not heard this.
Oh, there's a measure, there's a House bill that just came out in Oregon this past week that they're trying to move through the legislature that will allow nurses to bill for certain things without a doctor's order.
Really?
Yeah. And this is, it's things like doing advanced care planning. Could nurses bill insurance for an advanced care planning conversation? But yes, we can. We do it all the time. Why can we not be reimbursed? And so, And then there's some more national organizations working towards nurse reimbursement.
I think there's an assumption that those advanced care planning conversations had been happening all along with physicians, and it was just part of the program. But in reality, they weren't happening. And so Medicare created a few years ago this ability for a physician to bill for an advanced care plan conversation, which is fantastic, right? Because their time is valuable. But I also remember, within the last few years, finding out that billing code wasn't being utilized as robustly as they had hoped, which meant those conversations still weren't taking place. A lot of that has to do with time restriction. Some of it has to do with physicians' discomfort and their lack of training when it comes to having advanced care plan conversations as well. But Nurses, I think, do most of the heavy lifting when it comes to the conversations. They are the ones at the bedside. They have more time, still limited, but they have more time than a 15-minute conversation with a physician in an examining room. I don't think it's beneficial to take somebody and put them in a cold, sterile exam room with bright fluorescent lights, maybe strip them out of their clothes where they're sitting in a hospital gown or partially undressed, in an unknown environment that's uncomfortable, and then say, hey, I want to talk about your most intimate fears and hopes for your quality of life when you begin to die. I don't think that's a way to facilitate that conversation.
I agree. And that's another reason that EndNotes developed. And what we do is we actually do workshops around EndNotes. So it's not that we're telling somebody, go home, fill out this book, but we do it in groups. And we've had a couple of faith communities here in Central Oregon who have asked us to come and present this idea, the concept of holistic planning. And so then people are doing it in a group of like-minded individuals, maybe even friends and family who are all in the same room together. And so then when they start to go through the plan, and when we do it over multi-days, we actually have a whole day or half of the day about advanced directives specifically. And so we find that when somebody completes an advanced directive in a group setting, there's conversation stimulated. People say, oh, well, this is what I want. Oh, I'd never heard of that. Oh, maybe I would consider that. So it gets people thinking more about it as well. And like you said, it's in a much more comfortable environment.
Yeah.
Right? They feel safe. They feel comfortable. They don't feel pressured. There's more time to consider it. So I agree with you. I don't think that it's appropriate in a 15-minute clinical encounter. It has to be longer. And that's what we found in doing, and I think Elizabeth is going to talk about this more, about our outreach with individuals experiencing homelessness. And what we found in those conversations was that what kind of the aha that we had was key. What was key to completing an advanced directive was the facilitation. Walking through it. You can't just give somebody a piece of paper either and send them home and say, bring this back. People said, oh yeah, I got an advanced directive, but it was 10 pages long and I didn't understand what any of it said. But if somebody sits down with you and you talk through, well, this is, this kind of describe, what is this talking about? What is this section talking about? And then there's this whole conversation, and many of those conversations were 45 minutes to an hour. Just hearing someone, just listening and hearing what brought them to wanting to complete the advanced directive. That informs their goals and their values too, right? Past experiences might inform what their values are for the end of life. And it was just a much richer process, and then makes that person feel heard and helps them to make those decisions and write them down. So whether it's, a one-on-one facilitation over some time, or it's that more group environment where people get to converse and share ideas and think a little bit more holistically, that's where it needs to happen. And that could be a nurse who has the time to do it. It could be a community health worker or an end-of-life doula who's able to have a longer facilitated discussion. But it really does require more time.
I think having somebody to use as a sounding board is super helpful. I am one of these, I don't know exactly what the psychological term for it is, but when I verbalize and talk about what I'm thinking and how I view things, I end up sort of being able to suss out what I really think about something. I process, maybe I'm an oral processor, being able to speak it out loud helps me sort of determine what my values are, what I think is important. So being in a group, especially if it was a group of friends or a small family group, I can see where there might be some awkwardness with family, but I can also see where people might be, if they're very introverted or private, be introverted or uncomfortable if it's a group of people they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can see how for some people the one-on-one would work the best. But just having somebody to connect with. Because if it was easy to do without the conversations, if you didn't need the conversation, you could go onto your state's website, download the form, sign it, send it over to your doctor. Right. You would never even have to have a conversation with them about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are some people who do that, right?
That's
there are
true.
some people who that simplicity, I have my advance directive. I downloaded it. I submitted it. It's in my electronic chart. There are those people.
Right.
And, another group that comes up a lot for us, we have solo aging women.
Yeah.
Maybe no family at all. Maybe, some friends, but they're not quite sure. And that's where I think what we found with the faith communities who we've worked with, a lot of solo aging women, but they have friendships through their faith community. And so they're able to then say, oh, gosh, yeah, to have a healthcare representative. Well, maybe you would be mine. Sure. Will you be mine? Okay. And now they have a healthcare representative, whereas they thought it was impossible because they didn't have anybody before.
Yeah. They created a buddy system for themselves.
They created it. Yeah.
I think that's amazing. So as an end-of-life doula and a hospice nurse, you have companioned and supported a lot of people, especially during these advanced care plan conversations, because even for a person who's on hospice, those advanced care plan conversations continue to either be reinforced or to evolve as the care changes and their needs change and what they want changes. So you've been involved in those conversations. Tell me about a time that you were challenged when you were supporting a patient and family.
I wish there was just one that could come to mind, because, you want to be, like I said, that there's that hero mentality and you have this, kind of experience. But there have been a number of situations where I have felt challenged, but I think one of the toughest situations that I've been in was working in inpatient hospice and working with a woman who had ALS. And she communicated with a type pad. And it was the middle of the night and she had been in her chair and was reclined and ultimately wanted to just get back up and get into bed and be transferred into the bed. But because we didn't have a good communication system set up, we couldn't understand what she wanted. We couldn't understand how to get the chair to do what it needed to do to get her into bed. And I had a nursing assistant with me. It was the middle of the night, and both of us just broke down in tears because we so desperately wanted to get her what she needed, and we couldn't. And it felt so, it was really disheartening, and we felt really vulnerable and incapable of providing what she wanted. We eventually worked it out. I don't know how we worked it out to get this dear woman up and into her bed. But then it came to the time that woman then needed to be discharged home. She was temporarily at our inpatient unit. And we had to figure out there was no advanced care plan.
Oh, wow.
And my thing was, how do we get her home and get her the care that she needs in the way that she needs it if we don't know, we don't really know what that is, and very minimal support around her to be able to communicate in the way that she was able to communicate. And so that was one of the most challenging things. I think we eventually were able to get her in-home caregiving with somebody, I hope, this was many years ago, I hope somebody who could communicate in the way that she was best able to communicate. But it was the most helpless I have felt in knowing that had this conversation happened earlier, and we knew all the things that she wanted and how she wanted to be cared for. We knew how to provide that care in the inpatient setting. We had instructions for how to operate the equipment, or at least somebody who we could call to find out. If all those conversations had happened, I think it might have been a little more easeful to provide that care. And maybe we wouldn't have felt so helpless and so vulnerable and so absolutely unskilled. So not only then does an advanced care plan help the patient and the family get what they need, but it helps healthcare providers too, so that you aren't so distressed morally about what you're doing for this patient. You know that this is what this patient wanted. And when we follow what the patient has said they wanted, whether we agree with it or not, we know that we're providing the care that they want.
It makes so much difference, doesn't it?
It does.
So much difference. When you get ready to companion someone who's dying, how do you center yourself? How do you focus yourself to be doing this work?
Well, we at Peaceful Presence, we consider ourselves students of Roshi Joan Halifax at Upaya Zen Center, and she has an incredible tool called Grace, which is a mnemonic for a brief. It can be a longer process, but it can also be a brief meditation that is preparing yourself to be compassionate in your encounter. So it's grounding yourself and taking a breath, recalling your intention, remembering why you're doing this work, attuning, noticing yourself in your body, what you feel. And if you're directly with someone, what can you sense that they're feeling right now? And then the C is considering what will serve this encounter the best. How do you best show up for this person and for yourself at this time? And then you engage with the person. And it's just, that was a minute probably, but it slows you down. And we just encourage people, we do it ourselves, and we teach all of our end-of-life doula students to take 1 minute before you go into an encounter. Drop what has come before now and be present and consider why you are going into this work and who are you about to engage with, and be there as calm and steady as you can be.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. What part of doula work gives you the greatest joy, Erin?
Building relationship, and in that relationship, cultivating trust. I was just thinking about this this week, actually, because I have a gentleman who's 93 who I've been working with over the past 2 years. And our conversations roam all over the place, from politics to healthcare decisions to what has my experience been with end of life? What do I think it's going to be like? To some very real, raw conversations. And, he asks me things about very real bodily functions and things like this. And it's because we've built this relationship over 2 years. And that's what I love. I just love that I've been able to become a trusted individual for him, that he can open up and he can ask me anything. He can share anything with me. And I know what he wants at the end of his life. And I've assured him that I will help facilitate that and make that happen for him. And we have a human to human connection. We are in relationship. And that is what I love the best.
Yeah, this is why we do what we do. Amazing.
It's why we do it. Yeah.
How can listeners find Peaceful Presence Project, learn about your doula courses that you offer, because there's a lot of stuff to access there, and find information about your advanced care planning resources?
Very easy. It's the peacefulpresenceproject.org, and everything is there. It's all listed out across the top. There's a button that takes you right to EndNotes. And then there's a training page. There's information about compassionate communities, which is the foundation of our work. It's all right there at the peacefulpresenceproject.org.
Awesome. I will have a link in the show notes and also to your social media as well so that listeners can connect with you. Erin, thank you so much for the conversation. I love your passion for advanced care planning. You're awesome.
Thank you. Likewise. Likewise, Helen. Right back at you. We're in it together.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Heart of Hospice podcast. Check out our sponsor in the show notes and please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. We would appreciate it if you would share this episode with your friends and family and anyone who needs to know more about hospice. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.